this fan. Once I get the wiring hooked up in my room, I'll probably end up putting this in one of the spaces in my room.
And it only took me about 8 years to actually go through with that. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Casablanca Four Seasons ceiling fan. This particular model is in polished brass, has short antique white blades, and utilizes the Inteli-Touch control system. It is from May of 1984. And I do have the hang true and crossbar for this fan that is elsewhere. It has an Emerson K55 motor. And for some reason there is a hole on this side of the switch housing, which is covered up by that white plastic plug. Not entirely sure why that's there, as you don't really ever see those on Inteli-Touch Casablancas, but it is what it is, I suppose. So for those of you who have been watching my content for a very long time, you may be aware that this is the first Casablanca fan I ever acquired as a collector. Way back in June of 2014. Back when I was a youngster in the collecting world, I didn't really collect many quality fans. I just kind of collected whatever I saw and whatever I liked. This fan, however, was pretty much the first fan of any higher-end brand that I ever got in my possession, as Casablanca is certainly the most common higher-end brand that you find in my area. So I bought this fan off of eBay for $47, and I distinctly remember the day. It was the last day of school in 6th grade, so I was already over the moon, excited about summer vacation, and then I get home from school that day, and a package was waiting for me on the front porch, this fan being inside, so obviously I was ecstatic. However, this fan also came with a slew of problems, the big one being with the Inteli-Touch circuit. The fan came 100% complete, hang-true, crossbar, all the screws and everything. The only thing it was missing, outside of the Inteli-Touch control, was an LDM. The fan had no LDM in the switch housing, and it also did not have the connector pins on the wires to hook it up to any LDM. They were just spliced together with wire nuts. The blue and white wires that need to connect in order to make the fan run, that is. And up until this point, I had only ever seen pictures of Inteli-Touch Casablancas that were RMM2 or later, meaning they just had the hot and neutral wires for the light kit sticking out of the shaft into the switch housing. So when I saw that, I was extremely confused. So the lack of LDM certainly didn't help this fan's operation, and the board itself was generally pretty flaky. It didn't really respond to commands from the switch very well, and the reverse relay had gone bad as well. For the first few months I had this fan, I wasn't able to run it, as like I said, it didn't come with an IT control. However, I was eventually able to buy a W12 IT control off of eBay maybe a couple months later. So for the longest time, I was not able to properly run this fan due to its slew of Inteli-Touch problems. And some of you may have noticed that I do have a bit of a negative connotation when it comes to Inteli-Touch, and this fan would be the reason why. This was my first ever Casablanca fan, and my first hand experience with the control system. And yeah, it was not the most fun experience for me, especially not little 6th grade, 7th grade me. But thankfully, this fan is in working order today. I got a new board for it and a new LDM from Matt Cody at Fanimation in 2021, And then ECFE gave me a connector pin piece that I was able to splice the wires into so I could properly connect them to an LDM. I'm sure the top video, or the top comment on this video will be him saying you're welcome. So with all those new parts in order and hooked into the fan, this thing finally runs as intended. I wanted to fix this fan for the longest time, but I either didn't know how or just didn't have the parts appropriate to do so. Anyways, now we'll start the fan up. Starting with speed 1. The board is not 100% perfect. Every once in a while, it does still flake out a teensy bit. Like sometimes if I run it on speed 6 for a long period of time, then the buttons won't do anything, and I just have to hit the power button. But that's very minor. I can look past that. At least now when I flick the power button on, it doesn't immediately cycle through the speeds or anything like that. So there is speed 1, nice and aesthetic. Speed 2. This one's now more of a functional low speed. When I also first got this fan, the bearings were kind of rough and seized up. However, they soon loosened up pretty well. After a combination of me just running the fan for a while, and I believe I may have also added either some oil or WD-40 to them. And yes, I know you're technically not supposed to oil Casablanca bearings, but I was young back then, I didn't know. Speed 3. So like I said, this was my first Casablanca fan, which I got in June of 2014. I remember my first 5, but then after that it's a total blur. The second one I ever got was a white and brass Casablanca Ventura. I believe that was later the same summer. Third one was a Snow White Delta 2. That was Christmas time, 2014. Fourth was a white and brass Delta 2. That was January of 2015. And then that same month I got my fifth one, which was an antique brass Slumber Quiet Zephyr. And then after that I completely and utterly lost track. And now having well over 100 Casablancas, it's, yeah, pretty hard for me to mentally catalog it all. Speed 4. Something else I want to bring to attention real quick is, as I mentioned earlier, I got this fan off of eBay for $47, which isn't a bargain per se, but it's still definitely much lower than what you would see one of these things for on eBay today. As I sometimes see old posts and old, thread conversations of people talking about, like, oh, I saw this K63 Casablanca Zephyr or Fasco World's Fair or whatever on eBay for $70, which, granted, that's not cheap, but nowadays if something like that popped up on eBay, it would be $250 at least. So it definitely seems like times have changed in the eBay world in terms of fan pricing. changed for the worst. Speed 5. And as you can see, this fan does have a little bit of a wobble to it, though that is mostly due to the improper mounting bracket. In general, these blades are balanced pretty well. I'm not sure if I may have balanced them at one point, but I'm not entirely sure. And speed 6. This fan is incredibly fast and is blowing a ton of air. Casablanca's small fans are definitely known for being very powerful despite their size. Never overlook a little ceiling fan. Because you never know, big things sometimes come in small packages. And there you go. A polished brass Inteli-Touch Casablanca Four Seasons ceiling fan. My first ever Casablanca ceiling fan. Finally fixed and up and running once again.